Changes in our economy mean that there's an increasing demand for employees with suitable qualifications. That has been a theme, I think, of the questioning and answers that have taken place in this chamber today. If students don't have the opportunity to get those qualifications, they are seriously limiting their options for future careers. The South Australian Government has been clear on our commitment to increasing and targeting training opportunities to meet skills shortages. That's why our first state budget includes additional funding to connect more South Australians with the right skills to participate in the workforce, secure jobs and contribute to a growing economy. We're building 5 new technical colleges, bringing together the practical outcomes of trade schools with the new technologies that are now an integral part of modern workplaces. We're injecting more funding into adult community education, returning funding levels to where they were in 2018. We're also committed to alleviating skills shortages in sectors that are critical to our economy. We've reinstated classes in aged and disability care as well as childhood care and education at metropolitan TAFE campuses. And we're providing more support for industry training providers like the Master Builders Association and the Motor Trades Association to help rising skills needs and to help meet rising skills needs in their particular sectors. With the National Partnership Agreement on the Skilling Australians Fund coming to an end on the 30th of June 2022, we're providing an additional $11.9 million to continue delivering skills outcomes to individuals, businesses and industry as we negotiate a new agreement with the Australian Government. An additional $6.7 million over 2 years will extend the existing Job Trainer Fund National Partnership Agreement with the Australian Government until December 2023, increasing free or low-fee training places. The budget also commits to transferring ownership of Townley College's land and buildings into Aboriginal hands, as we said we would before the state election. This $8 million commitment will ensure Townley is owned by Aboriginal people, for Aboriginal people, and will remain a permanent foundation in the community and firmly on Kaurna land. The South Australian Government will continue to support low-fee and subsidised training pathways in close partnership with all training providers to build and train the workforce that we need. I want to thank the staff involved in the machinery of government transition to date. I know these things are often difficult and tedious work. I look forward to working together as the Department of Education, Training and Skills. The South Australian Government is strongly committed to delivering on the commitments we took to the election, and we're moving quickly to meet our promises. These measures will work towards building a strong vet sector and equipping South Australians with the skills industry needs now and into the future.
Thank you, sir. I'll go straight to questions in relation to, for those following at home, we're now on Budget Paper 4, Volume 3, and I think most of the questions would fit comfortably within page 174. There's several $100 million worth of grants and subsidies. There's FTEs, there's the net cost of providing services. Can I take us back to some discussions the Minister and I were having earlier in the day in relation to individual support courses? Can I ask, has the Department of Innovation consulted or received representations from the broader training sector here in South Australia, including key stakeholders that deliver the Certificate 3 in individual support, such as the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation and Octus? And if so, have those organisations and stakeholders expressed concern to the Department for Innovation about the decision to provide some extra specific funding to TAFE since the election to deliver the Certificate 3 in individual support?
Thank the member for the question. I've just conferred with my colleagues, and we, I think, are all on the same page that none of us have come across any or had any communication to that effect from any of those organisations.
I understand the Premier in particular, I'm not sure if the Minister has as well, but I'm certain I've heard the Premier express concerns about quality in non-government providers of individual support and other courses that have been restored to TAFE. Is there any evidence that non-government providers such as the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation don't deliver the same quality as TAFE SA in these courses?
Well, I'd be very surprised if and I'm not suggesting that the member for Morialta is misrepresenting the position, but I haven't heard the Premier say that in terms of my own comments. I think what I have been pretty consistently saying is that what we have heard from chiefly employers who employ graduates of these courses is that they wanted that offering to be back offered in metropolitan TAFE campuses. That is what drove our decision to commit before the election to reinstate them. And as I've said a couple of times already today, and I won't repeat it ad nauseum, but we were joined by some very happy employees in Rembrandt Living and Helping Hand at the announcement when we confirmed the money would be in the budget, who said they were very pleased to have those courses returned. So it's an election commitment that we are delivering on. The genesis of the election commitment was the feedback that we got largely from those employers. I think, broadly speaking, this is about growing the entire vocational education and training pie, as it were. It's about choice and make sure that part of that choice for people in South Australia is a strong public training provider as well. Certainly don't intend to set it up as a means of diminishing the role of the private sector, and I would say again that in terms of the courses that we reinstated, there are really big skills gaps there, and if we are going to address those skills gaps, we are going to need TAFE to be a part of the solution, and no doubt those private providers to be a part of the solution as well. Otherwise, we just quite simply won't succeed in meeting those gaps.
Is the Minister able to advise how many Certificate 3 and individual support commencements were combined with paid training contracts since the introduction of the Skilling SA program in 2018 with non-government training providers, and how many in paid training contracts, paid training contracts with TAFE SA over the same period?
We'll need to take that question on notice, which I will.
Thank you. Can the Minister advise what the average hourly rate for training in the Certificate 3 and individual support per student is in the non-government sector, and how much is TAFE SA's hourly rate on the same?
I might pass over for an answer on that one to Madeline Richardson.
So I don't have at hand the specifics on the hourly rate as it relates to the Cert 3 and individual support. So I'm happy to take that on notice with the Minister's support.
Thank you very much. What federal funding, such as commencement or completion payments, is foregone if Certificate 3 qualifications are completed institutionally rather than through paid training contracts? Might
give the Chief Executive, Adam Reid, an opportunity to have a swing at this one.
Thank you, Minister. If the question relates to Commonwealth revenue foregone, that would be under the National Partnership Agreement for the Skilling Australia's Fund, which concludes on the 30th of June. So in terms of revenue foregone, that would be subject to future negotiations around a new National Skills Agreement, but it may result in no further revenue foregone, depending on the circumstances of the new National Skills Agreement.
And can I ask directly on that one what the Minister's expectation is in relation to coming to a landing on a new National Skills Agreement?
Happy to answer that one. Thank you, Member. I've written already to the new Minister for Skills and Training in the Commonwealth Government, Mr Brendan O'Connor, and had a phone call with him where I stated in both the call and I think in my letter that South Australia's priority is coming to a landing on a new skills agreement for a whole host of reasons, including making sure the sector has some certainty, given how I think we've now been in negotiations which commenced with in 2020. So a heads of agreement was signed by South Australia for skills reform on the 23rd of July 2020. So we are about almost exactly a month shy of 2 years in negotiation for a new national skills agreement, which is obviously an incredibly long time. So in light of that, I took the opportunity when we had the new minister to speak to him and pass on verbally that the immediate priority for our state is a new agreement, and I sent a letter to the same effect to make sure, and I hope to be able to meet with him soon. The Chief Executive reminds me we actually led a multi-jurisdictional letter which we prepared and I signed, but was signed by other jurisdictions as well, to the Minister, so that we could all collectively reiterate our shared priority to make sure that the first priority for Minister O'Connor would be getting us together and starting work on a new agreement.
One of the significant points of discussion throughout the discussion here and in the TAFE section in relation to Certificate 3 in individual support has been about the difference between institutional training or a paid traineeship. And noting obviously that when a student is undertaking the traineeship, they're being paid for their efforts while they're on the worksite. In institutional training, such as offered by TAFE but could theoretically be offered by any provider, how many hours do students who are seeking to gain that Certificate 3 through institutional training have to work in unpaid job placements, or how many hours do they work in unpaid job placements, again, compared with the fact that those on a traineeship are under a contract of training with an employer?
I'm told, Member, not to be difficult, but that would be a question for TAFE.
All right. Is there, I appreciate the answer that the Chief Executive gave earlier in relation to the federal agreement that runs out at the end of June. Are there any federal payments, pardon me, such as sign-on and completion payments to employers that are not necessarily dependent on that national agreement, or is it all wrapped up at the end of June, that agreement? Are there federal payments to employers that will continue past the end of that agreement, I guess is the question.
Thank you, Member. I might ask Madeline Richardson to provide some detail on that question, if I may.
So in relation to employer incentives, there are a range of Commonwealth incentives that continue that were announced in the last Commonwealth budget that do support employers taking on apprentices and trainees. There are also programs that will be linked to the $11.9 million that was announced in the state government's budget that may also play a role in supporting employers as well.
So can I ask if there were... do we have any analysis of how much federal funding then will go to South Australian employers who are offering traineeships in this area if there were, say, 100 traineeships being offered?
We'll take it on notice and try to get you an answer on that, but I'm told that we may not be able to do that. But
Thank you, I appreciate it.
because it's a Commonwealth program, but we shall try.
Can I go to Budget Paper 3, page 23? Budget statement gets its first run in the park for the day. The bottom of page 23, it's confirmed that skills and training functions will transfer to the Department for Education from the 1st of July 2022. I also direct you to Budget Paper 5, page 87, which identifies departmental efficiencies in the order of about $70 million. So I've got a series of questions relating to those two budget lines. Can the Minister advise how many FTEs from the skills and training functions will transfer to the Department for Education from the 1st of July?
Thank the member for the question. Approximately 130 on the 1st of July will transfer.
And are those staff, is that the number post the application of the departmental efficiencies identified in Budget Paper 5, or does that MOG change, that machinery of government change, carry with it a further savings task?
Member for the question, and maybe I could talk first of all a little more broadly about the savings target to which the member refers here. So I think broadly speaking the department's, if I can refer to it as a global savings target, is about $85.2 million. The share for the training and skills component of the department is $17.2 million.
Is that over 4 years? Or
over 4 years. 17.2 over 4 years. That will transfer, or that will travel with those training and skills portfolio and the 130 approximate FTEs on the 1st of July. But in terms of what area is responsible for meeting those efficiency targets, as we have both commented before, education is ring-fenced and it will remain that way. And I might allow the Chief Executive, or ask the Chief Executive, I should say, to make a few comments about what work he is doing to look at where they can be found, but they will be found from what will be the training and skills component of the department once the machinery of government changes are complete.
Thank you, Minister. So, as the Minister highlighted, we have a significant savings task that was allocated to us in the budget, and the 17.2 that transitions across to the Department for Education. It's been made clear by both pre-election and by the Treasurer subsequently that Chief Executives are tasked now with determining how those savings will be met. So it will be the task of the Chief Executive of the Department for Education to determine how the $17.2 million will be achieved. But as the Minister highlighted, that is to be found within the training and skills portfolio. And again, I'm happy to hand back to the Minister, but the announcements in the budget that relate to training and skills initiatives are significant, in the order of $50 million of new initiatives into the training and skills investment.
Excellent segue, thank you, Mr. Reid, and that is right. So keeping some perspective on the 17.2 over 4-year figure, the government is strongly committed, obviously, to the areas we've spoken about on many occasions today, and has fully offset these savings through a range of new skills initiatives announced in this budget, which amount to over $50 million over the next 4 years, so significantly superseding the savings target. And I can talk about what makes up that $50 million figure. We've got $12.7 million to enable TAFE to return to delivering the courses about which we've discussed in some detail already. $11.9 million to continue the state share of funding under the Skilling Australians Fund National Partnership Agreement, while a new agreement with the Commonwealth is finalised. $8.8 million to fund courses where industry has identified skill shortages, such as, for example, bricklaying, saw doctoring, chefs and concreting. $5 million to upgrade Mount Gambier TAFE SA campus, which we've already discussed today. $4 million to restore funding cut by the former government in adult community education, or ACE. So that, I think, broadly speaking, makes up the $50 million which is going into the training and skills budget, and obviously grows that budget even when one takes into account the $17.2 million over the forward estimates that we shall need to find in savings measures.
Budget line you're going to?
No, I've got a few more on this budget line.
Okay. Can you let me know when you shift to go to the other side?
Yeah, okay, I've got about probably 5 or 6 to go, and then happy to do that if that's
sorry,
right.
a few is not 5 or 6, a few is 1 or 2.
Well, maybe I'll ask 1 or 2, and then
Okay.
we can shift, and then we'll come back to the same budget line if need be. The Minister or the Chief Executive, I'm not sure who, but somebody just said there was $17.2 million was the saving assigned to this program, and that when it moves to education, the 130 staff will come across, and this program will still have $17.2 million worth of savings to find. But I believe the Minister said that it will be ring-fenced around this program, and the cuts will not spread to anywhere else in the Education Department. Is that correct?
It'll be up to the training and skills part of what will be the Department for Education, next line, training and skills, to find those 17.2 over 4 years. They won't, I can put it this way, be permitted to leach out into other parts of the agency that have been ring-fenced, as you quite rightly point out. So
is the training and skills part of what is to be the Education Department after the 1st of July, presumably an executive directorate or whatever the body is within the department? Is that going to be purely this group of 130 people moving over and this program, or is it being integrated within the existing vet and training offerings, the pathways offering within the Education Department?
I mean, broadly speaking, remember, that's probably a question for Mr Westwell as well, as he's going to be the Chief Executive of the overall agency and tasked with the job of how that all fits together. I think that...
I understand that answer, but we've been advised that education will be quarantined from any of these cuts that are coming over from Department of Innovation. And I guess the key question I'm seeking to understand is that given that the Department for Education already has a substantial offering with substantial programs in this area, a number of which we discussed this morning, are they also part of the quarantine that this set of savings will not impact upon?
I understand your question. I've received some information, helpfully via SMS from Professor Westwell, who is obviously still tuned in, which is excellent.
One of the thousands.
Indeed, there's so many of them. I understand that they almost haven't got the bandwidth to cope with it, I'm
understand
told.
Julian Reedstra is watching too.
I bet she is too. Hello, Julianne, if you're there, from member for Morialto and myself. Vet and pathway stays in education, as in that part, so the savings targets won't cross over into that part of the whole department. They will be, they will remain in the part that is transferring from the Department of Innovation and Skills.
Member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, sir. I have a question for the Minister. I refer the committee to Budget Paper 5, the Budget Measures Statement, page 87, in regards to adult community education. Will the Minister outline this measure for the committee and how it supports foundation skills and also people with barriers to access learning opportunities?
I thank the member for Elizabeth for his very important question and his interest in this issue, and note that in the seat that he represents and also in the seats that the members for King and Playford represent, there are, I think, a number of community centres at which some excellent adult community education is provided. In fact, from memory, I think one that I visited with the now Minister for the Department of Human Services, or the Minister for Human Services, might be in what is now the seat of Playford, where I had a chance to sit down with people and talk to them about why low-cost, easily accessible adult community education was so important for them, and speak to the people providing it as well about the kind of clientele, I guess, and customers, if I put it that way, that come in and access it, and why it's important that we keep that provision in our state strong. Building foundation skills is often the first step for many learners, and it builds confidence to undertake further study or work, and certainly that is something, Member for Elizabeth, that I saw and have seen when I visited community centres where ACE is run. It is just not true to say that if you were to remove funding for ACE and remove these foundation skills courses, that those people would be able to jump across into the next level of training, whether that's something that TAFE or private providers provide, or university or anything like that. In many cases, these are people who might be, for instance, new arrivals. They might be older people who need some skills around digital literacy, people with language barriers, people who've been out of the workforce for a long period of time and trying to get back into it, and dealing with issues of not just confidence but understanding how things in the workplace may have changed. So this is really an integral and essential stepping stone for people like that to get them back into the workforce, or to help them change career, or possibly to help people who haven't got enough hours to support their family. And we know underemployment is an enormous issue in our society, and that's where ACE steps in. So I'm very proud that I think the second election commitment that we have managed to deliver in these portfolios is to reinstate the $1 million that was cut by the former government from ACE, keeping in mind that it is provided through not-for-profit community centres across South Australia, and that enables it to be low cost. It also means that the settings in which people who I think would be otherwise unlikely to seek training or support feel comfortable to go along. It's a relaxed environment with people there providing the training who understand the challenges that those people face, and they treat them accordingly and make sure that they're able to engage in it, stick at it, and then also help to assist them into maybe whether it's the workforce into a higher level of training once they've completed their adult community education. And of course, we know now in our workplace that digital literacy is an absolutely essential skill. There are very few workplaces or professions where people do not need at least a modicum of digital literacy, and community educators work with students to build those skills. And I think probably those skills have become even more important than they were now that we have seen the effect of a global pandemic, and the importance of being able to pivot to offering things in an online fashion or working from home. Of course, people who didn't have digital literacy skills, who needed to work from home and perhaps operate virtually, were in an invidious position where if they didn't have those skills, the same opportunities to work from home weren't provided to them as they were to the rest of the workforce who might have been more comfortable with setting up the laptop and working on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. But I can tell you there are lots of people out there who quite simply don't have those skills or the know-how to operate them. So it's another reason I think why it's important that we reinstated and restored the $1 million cut, and that is just the beginning. I'm committed as the Minister for Training and Skills to growing access to ACE, especially in our regions where I think its value is even more pronounced. And ACE providers, I think, will soon be able to access the increased funding opportunities for projects and partnerships that make a difference to South Australians. And I'll be very pleased to hopefully report to this place in the future about how those wonderful community education providers are utilising that $1 million that this government is putting back in to the betterment of the South Australian public.
Thank you. Can I go to budget paper 4, volume 3, page 167, and noting the relative program net cost between the 4 programs within the Department for Innovation. I think we've got $4 million for small and family business, $18 million for creative industries, 31 for industry, innovation and science, and this program is $351 million out of the total $400. Just want to take back to the answers we were hearing before about the departmental efficiencies. So the departmental efficiencies listed in page 87 of budget paper 5 are about $70 million or so in operating expenses and $13 million in investing. And despite the fact that 7/8 of the department appears to be in this program, I want to clarify that, is it correct that only 1/4 of the efficiencies are to come from this program? The remaining $60 million worth over 4 years are to come from the 3 much smaller programs. Am I understanding that correctly?
Thank you, Member. I can confirm that you are correct in relation to that component of what is now the programs run by the Department for Innovation and Skills. 17.2 relate to training and skills, which will come over to education. The remainder of that figure to which you referred, which I think is 85.2, will stay with the lucky gentleman next to me.
And I look forward to the estimates with the Deputy Premier and the Minister for Small Business tomorrow accordingly.
Just don't tell her I said that.
Can I clarify then, the 130 staff coming over to the Department for Education, have negotiations between the departments settled all of the details regarding the budget and FTEs that will transfer to education at this stage, or is there still some negotiation taking place?
I understand those negotiations have now been settled and concluded.
Will these functions, once incorporated within the Education Department, noting the Education Department also has responsibility for TAFE SA, continue to provide a responsive, high quality and contestable vet system to ensure that employers and students have a choice, and South Australia has a strong market of training providers?
Yes.
Can the Minister advise if the funding MAA between TAFE SA and the Department for Innovation and Skills will continue once the MOG occurs to ensure a necessary level of funding transparency endures?
thank the member for the question. The answer I have is that negotiations on that point are still occurring, but there will be an agreement. I'm not going to. I don't have the detail to be able to tell you if it's a memorandum of administrative agreement or something else, but I might ask if Madeline could provide some more information.
As part of an annual cycle, there are negotiations and discussions with TAFE to ensure that there's an agreement in place that supports government priorities, outcomes for students and funding as well.
Thank you. In relation to the $17 million over 4 years that is the savings task applied to this program that will be moving to education, is the Minister or the Department able to identify how much of that is out of operating in each of the years and how much of it is investing payments?
I understand it's all operating.
Thank you. And are you in a position then to provide any more detail about how you're going to achieve those operating savings?
Not at this stage. That responsibility rests with the Chief Executive, and I think he's already turning his mind, of course, to how that might be done, but I'm not in a position to provide any more detail to you today.
I'm sure he's looking forward to that task, and obviously the 130 staff have a challenging period ahead. Can I ask then, is there a set of the $17.2 million over 4 years has been identified? Is the Minister able to break that down by financial year? How much in each of the relevant financial years is expected?
I can answer that question. Just in terms of the breakdown of the $17.2 million over the 4 years, in 2022-23 it's $4.1 million, in 2023-24 it's $4.2 million, in 24-25 it's $4.4 million, and in 25-26 it's $4.5 million.
Thank you. And I note that the current program has about $16.6 million in employee benefit expenses, $358 million in grants and subsidies. Is the savings anticipated to be coming from efficiencies within employees amongst those 130 staff? And if so, how many staff are expected to be separated as a result of these savings? Or is alternatively the government proposing to reduce the grants and subsidies, which I assume are mostly for the provision of subsidised training?
I thank the member for the question. There's a few things I might say in response to that. First of all, I am reminded that the Treasurer has said there is no expectation that savings are to be met by cuts in FTEs. That comes to the discretion of the Chief Executive, and I know that In this case, Professor West has already turned his mind to that and will be doing everything he can to find those savings in an appropriate fashion. But also, I guess more broadly than that, as we have already spoken about in this hearing, I've already written to the new federal member, made it clear that a new national skills agreement is top priority for South Australia, and I'm hoping that the outcome of that might be increased federal investment in the skills and training system in South Australia, which of course would be greatly welcomed, but would very much, I guess, assist us in continuing to grow the system, and I guess. And the Chief Executive reminds me that will most likely, as these national agreements often do, require complementing investment from the state, and I'll be progressing those conversations once I have a read from the new federal minister on what that might look like. But I think it's just important to keep a bit of perspective in relation to questions around the savings targets here, about how they will be met, the discretion the Chief Executive has, the comments from the Treasurer that there's no expectations that it's FTEs, and our resolve to make sure that we negotiate a new agreement for South Australia that sees more money flow to skills and training in this state.
Member for Finnis, you have some questions. Some omnibus questions.
Omnibus questions on notice.
Give the member for Moriarty a bit of a rest.
First question: for the department and agency reporting for each department and agency reporting to the minister, what is the total cost of machinery of government changes incurred between 22nd of March 2022 and the 30th of June 2022? 2, for each department and agency reporting to the minister, which administrative units were created, abolished or transferred to another department or agency between 22 March 2022 and the 30th of June 2022, and what was the cost or savings in each case? 3, for each department and agency reporting to the minister, how many executive appointments have been made since 22 March 22, and what is the annual salary and total employment cost for each position? 4, for each department and agency reporting to the minister, how many executive positions have been abolished since 22nd of March 2022, and what was the annual salary and total employment cost for each position? 5, for each department and agency reporting to the minister, what has been the total cost of executive positions terminations since the 22nd of March 2022? 6, for each department and agency reporting to the minister, will the minister provide a breakdown of expenditure on consultants and contractors with a total estimated cost above $10,000 engaged between the 22nd of March 2022 and the 30th of June 2022, listing the name of the consultant, contractor or service provider, the method of appointment, the reason for engagement and the estimated total cost of the work? 7, for each department agency reporting to the minister, will the minister provide an estimate of the total cost to be incurred in 2022-23 for consultants and contractors, and for each case in which a consultant or contractor has already been engaged at a total estimated cost above $10,000, the name of the consultant or contractor, the method of appointment, the reason for engagement and the total estimated costs? 8, for each department and agency reporting to the minister, will the minister advise whether it will be subject to the 1.7% efficiency dividend for the 2022-23 year to which the government has committed, and if so, the budgeted dollar amount to be contributed in each case and how the savings will be achieved? 9, for each department or agency reporting to the minister, how many surplus employees were there at the 30th of June 2022, and for each surplus employee, what is the title or classification of the position and the total annual employment cost? 10, for each department and agency reporting to the minister, what is the number of executive staff to be cut to meet the government's commitment to reduce the spending on employment of executive staff by $41.5 million over 4 years, and for each position to be cut, its classification, total remuneration cost, and the date by which the position will be cut. 11, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what saving targets have been set for 2022-23 and each year of the forward estimates. What is the estimated full-time equivalent impact of these measures? 12, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, will the Minister advise what share it will receive of the $1.5 billion the government proposes to use over the 4 years of uncommitted capital reserves held in the budget at the time it took office, and the purpose for which this funding will be used in each case? 13, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what is the actual FTE count at the 30th of June 2022, and what is the projected annual FTE count for the end of the year of the forward estimates? What is the budgeted total employment cost for each year of the forward estimates, and how many targeted voluntary separation packages are estimated to be required to meet budget targets over the forward estimates, and what is their estimated cost? 14, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how much is budgeted to be spent on goods and services for the 2022-23 and for each year of the forward estimates? 15, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, how many FTEs are budgeted to provide communication and promotion activities in 2022-23 and each year of the forward estimates, and what is their estimated employment cost? 16, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, what is the total budgeted cost of government paid advertising, including campaigns across all mediums in 22-23? 17, for each department and agency reporting to the Minister, please provide for each individual investing expenditure project administered, the name, total estimated expenditure, actual expenditure incurred to the 30th of June 2022, and the budgeted expenditure for 2022-23, 2023-24, 2024-25 and 2025-26. For each grant program or fund the Minister is responsible for, please provide the following information for the 2022-23, 23-24, 24-25 and 25-26 financial years. The name of the program or fund, the purpose of the fund or program, the budget of payments into the program or fund, the budget expenditure from the program or fund, and details including the value and beneficiaries or any commitments already made to the funded to be funded from the program or fund.
The member for King, I think you've been trying to get my attention.
Thank you. I refer the committee to Budget Paper 5, Budget Measures for the Innovation Portfolio, page 89. How is the government supporting industry with a focus on improving apprentice and trainee outcomes?
I thank the member for King for her question, and very pleased to give the committee some information about this important topic and what this Malinaskis government is doing to support industry, with a focus particularly on improving apprentice and trainee outcomes. We are clear on the need to address the challenges facing industry to ensure South Australia is best positioned to realise the workforce opportunities that come from economic growth. Mentoring and coaching are widely recognised practices in the modern workplace, building an on-the-job learning culture committed to connecting people to opportunities and support to retain talent. Apprenticeships and traineeships offer the next generation of skilled workers a significant opportunity to connect to industry experience and workplace participation. However, finding the right pathway, navigating the world of work and combining training can be challenging for employers and apprentices. And as I think I have said in my answer to some other questions today, I shared some anecdotes which have stayed with me, particularly in terms of a fascinating tour I had when I was still the Shadow Minister of the Red Arc facility in Lonsdale. Everyone here will be familiar with that brand. There's probably some people who, like myself, are fond of pretty much everything they make and would love to shove it all in my car if my wife would let me, but she won't. But they are an incredible South Australian success story. They are a global brand now, respected as an industry leader, and the stuff is made right here in South Australia. It is a fantastic story, and the man behind the growth from Red Arc is Anthony Kittle, who is also someone who is really committed to South Australian manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. He's also committed to making sure that he gives apprentices a go and trainees a go. But I have to say that I was alarmed when I went there, and the questions that I asked as the then Shadow Minister for Skills and Training were really about what support over and above the support that you currently get to nurture and support your apprentices through from commencement to completion do you need? Because I said, Anthony, I regularly hear from employers that that is getting a bit harder, not due to any failings of employers, but due to often more complex home lives or personal challenges. Issues around mental health regularly come up, and he shared a story with me. They had a apprentice who was, I think, close to 3 years into the 4-year apprenticeship, so really close to completing, and there was a job on offer for him there at Red Arc if he managed to complete the apprenticeship. Out of the blue, with no indication, he stopped coming to work and was routinely calling in sick. Anthony took it upon himself as the chief executive of Red Arc to start dropping around to the apprentice's house on his way to work in the morning to knock on the door and check in on him, and discovered that he was up playing Call of Duty or Fortnite or whatever it is the kids are playing at the moment. My daughter's just discovered Minecraft, which is an enormous problem in our household at the moment, mainly because mum and dad don't understand how it works. But he was dropping around, making sure he was up, giving him a lift to work, saying you're only 1 year from finishing this and having a job. And even with that incredible support from the chief executive of a company that was going global, experienced incredible growth, that young person just quit because he basically didn't care enough and wanted to stay at home and play computer games essentially instead. Now, I mean, setting aside the incredible support that Anthony Kittle has provided young people in his business, and it really is a beacon to other employers about what can be done, even by people who are as senior and as busy as Anthony Kittle is. I think it's alarming in terms of what we're asking employers to do now, to try to, on top of the daily jobs they have in terms of running often incredibly busy businesses, global businesses, to also be in charge of the well-being of the young people who are working on their site is in many cases just more, I think, than we can possibly expect of them. So I am very keen to partner with industry, partner with our group training organisations and registered training organisations to see what we can do as a government to try to take a little bit of that burden off them, so that they can focus on running their businesses and growing their businesses and the jobs that will create. Because, of course, if they do that, there will be more apprenticeship spots, there'll be more traineeship spots for other young people, and it'll leave a bit more of the work around pastoral care and nurturing young people through the role to other people. Industry-led mentoring programs offer apprentices and trainees access to industry-specific supports designed to equip them for success and keep them in the industry. Improved engagement, retention and completion of apprenticeships or apprentices help alleviate skill shortages. Of course, we know that because if we are, for example, seeing 50% go through to completion, well, there's a hell of a lot of work and effort and costs going in from GTOs, RTOs, training providers and employers who are directly employing apprentices, which in 50% of cases doesn't amount to a completed apprenticeship or most likely a job in the workforce. So the government is investing $1.28 million in industry-based outreach and mentoring programs for this specific purpose. Now, the Master Builders Born to Build outreach program will strengthen pathways into the building and construction industry for secondary school and vocational education and training students over the next 4 years. And one of the first trips out into the field, if I could put it that way, that I got to do as the Minister was to join Will Frogley and some of his team who are there at Master Builders to go out and mentor apprentices on the work site. And we got to go and visit the incredible dig site, construction site next to SAMRI, where the proton therapy facility is going to be built, and talk to the senior people there about the same kind of challenges, to be honest, that they are facing, that Anthony Kittle faced. In fact, I think one of the things that was passed on to me that I'm sure the member for King will be interested in is that the more senior workers on that site said they had never in their careers, and a number of them had worked for 30 years, found it as hard to get tradies to take up a lead tradie position for a few more dollars to be in charge of a couple of extra young people. They said increasingly they're finding those younger people just not interested in the extra responsibility, even though it might come with some more dollars. And whereas before, people were knocking the door down to get those roles, now they were literally begging people to take on those roles. So that was an interesting perspective. We got to go to a private building site as well, talk to the apprentices there, and I've got to say I was really impressed by the rapport that the representative from Master Builders had with, I think he had something like 80 apprentices that he is responsible for. So spending his entire working week driving from site to site, speaking to apprentices on behalf of Master Builders to make sure they're tracking all right, talking to the employer who is in charge of the apprentice, saying how are they going. And I can tell you I was privy to a couple of very, very frank conversations from some builders who had been in the industry for 50 years who said the last couple were rubbish, but this one's pretty good, which is, I guess, important for a minister to see. But it showed to me the importance of the role that the Master Builders were playing with that outreach program. And when I heard one-on-one directly from the young apprentices about how this particular person had helped them stay in, even when they were having tough experiences with employers who they might not have got along with, they would either try to work on that relationship so they could continue, or find them another site or another employer in which they could continue their apprenticeship was. So I'm very pleased that we're going to be investing $280,000 over the 2022-23 and 23-24 periods, as well with the Motor Trades Association, the Automotive Trades Mentoring Program, to deliver additional support to retain automotive apprentices and trainees to increase training completions. And I got to go down and do a visit at the MTA facility recently for their expo, and talk to young people who were undertaking their apprentices and some of the apprenticeships, and some of the employers looking for new apprenticeships, and speak to representatives from MTA about what they're doing to make sure that their offering in terms of electric vehicles is sufficient in terms of making sure that the people who graduate have the skills to work on the next generation of cars. So we are working with both Master Builders and the Motor Trades Association to help them, support them with the mentoring programs that they have in place, and I'm very confident that it's going to resolve or result in better outcomes for the apprentices, better outcomes for the employers, better outcomes for the RTOs and GTOs, and a higher completion rate that will see more of the investment that we are all collectively putting into these young people come to fruition and see them enter the workforce.
Member for Morialton.
Thank you, sir. Can I go to Budget Paper 4, Volume 3, page 173, in the highlights talks about supporting career pathways, including apprenticeships and traineeships. Can the Minister identify how many apprenticeships and traineeships there have been in the public sector in each of the last 4 years, and how many are expected to be in the each year of the forward estimates?
I'm told that the Attorney-General is actually the Minister responsible for the delivery of, that might come as a surprise, it did to me as well, but it is the Attorney-General responsible for the delivery of traineeships in the public sector. I stand to be corrected on that, but I understand he was asked questions as well about that yesterday, I think.
Can I clarify then? I understand that the Attorney-General may well be responsible for a particular program. It's possibly he's responsible for everything to do with apprenticeships and traineeships in the public sector, but can I clarify, is it possible that given that there is funding that goes from the Department for Innovation and Skills, as I understand it, towards the delivery of these through grants and subsidies to public sector traineeships, is the Minister able to find out how many trainees and apprentices have been hosted in the public sector over each of the last 4 years and are scheduled to be over the next 4 years?
We shall try to do that. If we can't, we can't. Or if it is a matter that another arm of government is responsible for, we perhaps can refer that on to them.
I thank the Minister for that. While making that inquiry, perhaps a subset of that question is how many of those numbers were hosted through a group training organisation in each of the relevant years as well. If it's possible to find one number, then perhaps it's possible to find both.
We will attempt to find that detail for the member for Morialto.
I'm very grateful. The same page, there's a reference elsewhere, I'm assured. Can the Minister advise how the government expenditure per annual hours of vet delivery will be achieved, down from $22.30 to $19.80?
I might pass over to Madeline Richardson to provide an answer on that one, if I may.
So I believe you were referring to the government expenditure per annual hours of vet delivery and the differential between the 22.30 and the 19.80. And I think in response to that, my advice would be is that there's a range of factors that impact on the cost per hour of delivery, including class sizes, including where training is being delivered, including demand as well. And I would say all of those are considerations in that projection and the estimated result that are also influenced by policy settings and priorities as well.
Can I ask then, following from that answer, are there any particular courses that are expected to be targeted in order to assist in reducing that hourly rate of delivery that is being sought?
What I might say, Member for Morialto, just for the sake of a bit of clarity, my understanding is there's been no change to subsidies in terms of a reduction. So I want to make that clear from the outset. But I might need to turn to Mr. Reid or Madeline to explain how it works, because I probably can't provide that level of detail to you, but there have been no cuts to the subsidies.
Subsidies are paid in relation to activity delivered by training organisations, and they are also informed by a range of factors and reviewed yearly as well.
Well, is VET commissioning modelling intended to be used to assist with reducing the hourly rate on average?
I'll pass over to Madeline again for this.
So just in response to your question, I'd probably just reiterate that the level of subsidy is set by understanding and a range of factors that determine how much we might pay per hour. As I said earlier, looking at demand, looking at class sizes, looking at other priorities that there might be around as well to determine that.
Might move to another budget line. Thank you. Budget paper 5, page 90, in relation to the Towndy asset sale. Can the Minister advise in relation to the transfer of ownership of the Towndy College land and buildings from the State Government, what level of ongoing funding will be provided for asset maintenance support as well as any training funding?
And it's about $150,000 a year.
So, to be clear, my understanding is that last year there was about $830,000 worth of peppercorn lease arrangements, so that support annually will be replaced by the gift of the land. There was about $150,000 in terms of asset maintenance support, and from the Minister's answer it's proposed that that funding continue at the same level. Is that coming out of this program? And so will therefore that stream of funding now come from the Department for Education?
So the budget line to which I referred, the roughly $150,000 per year, transfers across to education, so we'll be there for that in future years.
And perhaps can be helpful and give the Minister an opportunity to confirm that it will also be quarantined from any further cuts as a result of the department's, this program having to find $4 million worth of efficiencies per year.
Again, a decision for the Chief Executive, but I can't, from the discussions that we have had around our commitment on Towndy so far, I don't anticipate any cuts being applied. In fact, there's a fair bit of work I think we're going to have to do with
You have a tremendous opportunity here, Minister, to provide some advice to the Education Chief Executive in relation to this funding and giving them certainty that it will continue.
Well, we're certainly committed to Towndy, I can tell you that, and the transfer. And we've already had, in fact, just last sitting week, I think the Deputy Premier, the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and myself met with Professor Buckskin and some others from Towndy to discuss the challenges they face. We're committed to the future of Towndy. I certainly can't see how applying any of the efficiencies that are there in, for the training and skills area to Towndy is going to in any way help them get back on their feet, which is what we ideally want them to do. I think that's probably as far as I can go at this point.
I look forward
Member
to...
for Elizabeth, sorry, that's a supplementary.
Well, just perhaps as a supplementary to that, on the same budget line on the Towndy asset sale, can the Minister outline how it supports learning opportunities for Aboriginal students and what progress has been made?
I thank the member for Elizabeth for the very important question. As I stated before, we are committed to the future of Towndy, and I've been in regular communication with both the member for the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs and the Minister, or the Deputy Premier in this case, who has a very large degree of interest in Towndy as well, both in her current role and in previous roles. And the Malinaskis government has committed to ensuring that Towndy College is owned by Aboriginal people for Aboriginal people, and to give it a permanent foundation in the community on Kaurna land. The measure in this budget provides $8 million in 2022-23 to transfer ownership of the Towndy College's land and buildings. And I think this is an important part of us acknowledging and recognising the significance of quality training and employment that Towndy has delivered in a culturally safe, community-based environment since as far back as 1973. I certainly know from my discussions over a number of years, not just with Minister Ma and the other place and the Deputy Premier, but also with people like Professor Buckskin, I know the high regard that in which Towndy is held in the Aboriginal community. They are passionate about preserving it. We are passionate about making sure they can deliver on that. And I know that Towndy's existence as a community organisation also supports and promotes cultural knowledge and understanding across South Australia more broadly, of course, outside the Aboriginal communities as well, and that is incredibly important. Importantly, Towndy delivers vocational training and adult education to Aboriginal students who achieve success when their learning happens in a community-based setting, and we've spoken a bit about that today already in relation to adult community education, and being supported by other members of their community who understand, I guess, their culture and the challenges that they still face in our society. And Towndy also partners with many Aboriginal countries across South Australia and works hard to build the foundation skills of Aboriginal young people and adults to set them up for success in further education and then, of course, into employment. And up to now, Towndy has operated on land owned by the government and uses buildings and other assets owned by the government. A considered transfer of land, building and assets with Towndy and other community stakeholders is an important step towards strengthening its community and social impact. Long-term sustainability, which I mentioned in my answer to the question before, the excellent question from the member for Elizabeth. We need to look here at long-term sustainability over and above the transfer of land, and that was really the topic of conversation with Professor Buckskin, Minister Ma and the Deputy Premier about how we secure that long-term sustainability for Towndy into the future, and of course making sure that it's done under Aboriginal leadership as well. And if I could maybe elaborate a little on what we discussed at that meeting last sitting week with the Attorney General and Deputy Premier and members of the Towndy Board. Following that meeting and the very frank conversation I think that we had about the effect upon the ending of the previous funding agreement that was in place with Towndy, the effect of COVID as well in terms of the cessation of some of their training and a difficulty in keeping their own workforce there to provide that training into the future. I've asked the Department for Innovation and Skills to progress the work as a priority in conjunction with Townley's board, but I've also had a number of conversations already with Professor Westwell about how we best support Townley into the future. And I'm also keen to see if we can't pursue some opportunities for Townley through the new Albanese federal government, because I think there might be some opportunities there as well. And I'm hoping that I can join with Minister Maher and the Deputy Premier to do that. And I might complete my answer by just passing on another excellent communication from the Chief Executive of the Education Department, who is in regular contact with me now on the phone, which is good, where he reiterates there are no plans to change the funding to support Townley and the maintenance of its facility, which of course I think will be good news to everyone here. So I'm hoping that we can rebuild this very important institution. Hope to have more good news down the track on that front for members of this place.
Thank you. And supplementary to that, I understand about $420,000 in funding support was also provided to Townley last year, in addition to the $150,000 in maintenance support. Is the Minister in a position to identify the quantum of funding that will be provided to Townley to ensure that it's able to both deliver the courses that it seeks to, but also continue the transformation that the board has identified as an opportunity for the organisation in the coming years?
I might provide just a little bit of background that I might pass over to one of my learned colleagues to add a bit of extra detail to it. But in terms of the historical funding agreements that Townley has received from government for the delivery of training and other services, 2015-16, 2.225, 16-17, the same amount, 17-18, 2.5 adjusted for CPI, 18-19, 2.5, 19-20, 2.5, at which point that funding line was no longer continued. I think that was certainly a topic of conversation at the meeting I had with board members the week before last about the effect that the cessation of that grant in the vicinity of 2.5 million and the effect that that has had on their long-term sustainability, on top of course, the effects of COVID on their delivery model. But in terms of the member's more specific question around support going forward, I can say, flowing from that meeting that I had with the board and conversations that I and staff have had subsequently with the Chief Executive, both Mr. Reid and Professor Westwell, where those issues or requests are under active consideration right now. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to update the member very soon about the results of those negotiations and considerations.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Can we go to page 174 and expenses, I suppose? Earlier this morning we talked about the technical colleges, which are being delivered by the Department for Education, obviously, but within those technical colleges is the anticipation that training will take place, which presumably it will, to a large extent, if not completely, be funded through the program that's currently under examination. So has the department had any input into the design, the governance, the model related to these technical colleges? And are we able to identify over the forward estimates how many extra apprentices or trainees are the technical colleges, or just take Findon, for example, expected to deliver?
Just give me that reference again.
I'm looking at the program summary, page 174. Grants and subsidies is 358 million, and I'm anticipating that in the years to come that line will be applied to the funding of these programs.
I think the only question you could ask is, does the funding provide to those programs now? I don't think it's not. I think that's the extent of
the funding line applies to the forward estimates, sir.
Well, is it in the forward estimates or not?
Well, about to find out.
Okay.
I think the answer that I can give the member is similar to an answer I've already probably given, and I'm happy to be able to. I'm not saying I'm going to take it on notice, but we'll have more detail, I hope, soon. But the model is still being worked through, as I've said, in response to questions earlier, and we're doing that very closely with industry. Because, for obvious reasons, about making sure that what's offered at the technical colleges are the skills and courses that employers like BAE, who joined us yesterday at Findon, are actually looking for. That is underway. Negotiation or consultation, rather, with the Department of Innovation and Skills, I know will be a part of that broader consultation as well, of course. And I guess once we've sort of landed what the actual model will be, we'll be able to answer the question that the member asked in a bit better detail than I can right now.
Thank you. Minister, there's a fellow called Ryan who is appearing in paid TV advertising talking about how much he's looking forward to these technical colleges delivering apprentices that he might be able to take on. How is it that the Minister is saying that the model hasn't been determined yet and we don't know whether there'll be apprentices or how many apprentices when the government is willing to spend taxpayer dollars on advertising, welcoming the fact that they will?
Your portfolio?
Sorry?
Is that advertising part of your portfolio?
Yeah, the advertising is not, no.
Okay.
The advertising is about this portfolio, sir.
In that case, you can answer it if you wish, but I'm happy for you not to answer it.
I guess what I would say is just that obviously what we want the technical colleges to achieve is to have, and I've said this in an answer to previous questions today, is to be able to provide a pathway for people from year 10 to year 12 into vocational education and training and then into the workforce, and part of that is to make sure that we try to provide people who are, I guess, and I've said this earlier this morning, more apprenticeship ready than we have had in the past, because I think we've probably established pretty clearly that the feedback we are getting from industry and the feedback that we are getting from employers who directly employ apprentices, as well as the feedback that we have very clearly got from GTOs and RTOs, including such as the MTA, is that there are issues around the readiness of the people they are taking on board to undertake an apprenticeship and actually complete an apprenticeship. So we know that these technical colleges will produce people that can go on and do apprenticeships, as I think is outlined in the advertisement to which the member refers. I don't think there's any question on their ability to be able to do that. But there are some things that we are still obviously working through and discussing in terms of the more finer details of how the model will work, but I've already spoken at length on many occasions, including at Findon yesterday and including at Mount Gambier the week before last, that we will be offering skills around some of the more traditional trades as well, because we have skill shortages in a whole heap of those areas at the moment, including, I think, to name a few, electricians, plumbers, many of those. So no doubt our colleges will have to cater for those if they are to do what they are intended to do and help us meet those skill shortages. So I guess there's no surprise in that respect that we are already fielding, I think, not just queries on enrolment from parents who might like to see their kids attend one of our 5 technical colleges, but also questions from employers who have traditionally employed apprentices about when they are going to come online and how they can make the most and benefit from them.
A bit of a very small question with a small answer.
Thank you, sir. I note that we started a couple of minutes late, so I am grateful for your forbearance. Minister, did anybody from the group within government who was putting together the TV ads with Ryan in them speak to your office, yourself, or indeed the Department of Innovation and Skills about the detail of how many apprentices would be delivered by these technical colleges prior to those ads going to air?
Could I just have the question again?
Did anybody from the group within government who was putting together those TV advertisements paid for by the taxpayer speak to either the Minister, his office, or indeed the Department for Innovation and Skills to check whether or not there were definitely going to be apprentices underway in these technical colleges before putting those ads to air?
I don't want to end on a negative note after it's been such a cordial estimates hearing, but I don't think the question relates to anything in the budget papers for which I am responsible. But having said that, we are certainly talking about, at the very least, pre-apprenticeships, and we've discussed that at length today. I don't see any indication that there's anything inaccurate about the ad to which the Minister refers. I don't think anyone from memory spoke to me about the content of the ad. It's not something I've been involved in.
I'm sure Ryan will be disappointed.
The allotted time has now expired. I declare the examination of the proposed payments for the Department for Innovation and Skills adjourned until tomorrow.